Right, so we are live. So, what is up there then, guys? My name is Bobby Salazar, and I'm your Nerdic Pro podcast general manager. And welcome to part number 2 of Nerdic Pro Weekly, episode 15, and the final episode of the Nerdic Pro podcast, to take place here on Facebook. Um, Well, not technically the last ever episode of the Nerdic Pro podcast to take place here on Facebook, but it will be one of the last podcasts to actually take place here on Facebook. And for podcast full time over on Anchor Spotify podcasts from this Monday. So this is part number 2 of episode 15 and week 15 of the Nerdic Pro Weekly podcast. And this podcast will be pretty much dedicated to this past Wednesday. This past Wednesday's edition of AEW Dynamite, right? Where there was some mega news coming out of the opening segment of Dynamite, right? Tony Khan has been teasing for the past couple of weeks that he's had a big announcement, or a major announcement, whatever, to be announced this past Wednesday, to have been announced this past Wednesday. So Tony Schiavone and Tony Khan open up this past Wednesday's edition of Dynamite, of AEW All Elite Wrestling's Dynamite, right? And then Tony Khan announces, he says that it's been 3 years near enough that All Elite Wrestling has actually been about. Yada, yada, yada. And obviously started at Daly's Place this past Wednesday. This past Wednesday's edition of Dynamite was at Daly's Place. And when they started, there was another wrestling organization that had just turned 17 years old. This wrestling company was known and is still known as Ring of Honor Wrestling, or ROH. And obviously back in October, start of November, Ring of Honor had announced that they were going to be going into a temporary hiatus from their show that took place back in December. I did a podcast of it on, I want to say, either episode 4 or 5 of the Nerdic Pro Weekly. About 11, 12 weeks ago. And and then recently they've announced that they're going to be returning from hiatus on April 1st, 2022 with their Supercard of Honor event. So Tony Khan then announced that he's been a fan of Ring of Honor for many, many years, right? And then goes on to explain that obviously quite a bit of the AEW locker room are former quite a lot of the current AEW locker room are former Ring of Honor superstars. So you've got people like CM Punk, Jay Lethal, Christopher Daniels, the American Dragon Bryan Danielson, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, Orange Cassidy, Trent Beretta, Jay White, Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page, Nick and Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks, Excalibur on commentary. I know that he spent quite a bit of time over in Ring of Honor. As I know that he was the commentator, one of the commentators for the All In pay-per-view that took place on September 1st, 2018. And yeah, so quite a lot of the AEW locker room have been built up through Ring of Honor. And then he goes on to announce that earlier on that day he had signed a deal with someone, with presumably Ring of Honor management, of, I think his name is John Sinclair or something Sinclair or something, that Tony Khan is the now new owner of Ring of Honor. And the thing, and the key point, and some of the key points of that announcement is that Tony Khan announced that Tony Khan purchased Ring of Honor. AEW did not. AEW did not. So then, obviously, with Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor out of his own pocket, right? Ring of Honor doesn't belong to AEW. Ring of Honor belongs to Tony Khan, right? Just the same as All Elite Wrestling. Now, in the sort of time building up to this announcement, I would have never have thought that Ring of Honor would have actually been mentioned at any point in it. I originally thought that it was going to be some sort of announcement for this Sunday, a match for this Sunday, or a new signee to AEW for Tony Khan to actually welcome into AEW or whatever. And yeah, so I originally thought that, again, it would be some sort of match for this Sunday. It would be some at Revolution. It would be a bit of a tweak to a match. Excuse me, or just a miniature change to a match this Sunday at Revolution, right? Something to do with Rampage tonight. Yada, yada, yada. Right? Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that Ring of Honor would actually be mentioned in this segment, in this opening segment, in this announcement, in this fucking major piece of news to come from Tony Khan, right? Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Ring of Honor, right, back in 2002, literally just after the WWF at the time had changed the name from the World Wrestling Federation to the World Wrestling Entertainment, Ring of Honor, a new company based in, I want to say, the northeast of America, had held their first show. Right, this show had featured the likes of Low Key, the Fallen Angel, Christopher. Well, it had featured a main event of the likes of the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, Low Key, Mark and Jay Briscoe of the Briscoe Brothers, the now current Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, and the 12-time Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions as well. Yeah, so as well as other people as well. And yeah, so along the way, they've pretty much built up multiple different wrestlers, right? To the extent of Kevin Steen, who then later on became known as Kevin Owens, El Generico, who then later on became known as Sami Zayn, Austin Aries, right? AJ Styles, Kenny Omega, Nick and Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks, right? Who else was there? Fucking just on top of the head, them lot anyways. No, Tyler Black as well, who then later on became known as Seth freaking Rollins, right? amongst other wrestlers as well who I've missed out, not deliberately, just off the top of my head. And yeah, so they made quite a lot of wrestlers and actually helped a lot of wrestlers actually earn their fame, if you want to put it that way. And yeah, over the years they've had like multiple working relationships with other wrestling organisations, kind of like what the Nerdic Pro podcast has with Brain Tumor Research, as well as Falling Star Wrestling, right? And the Falling Star Wrestling podcast as well. And yeah, so and then like Ring of Honor have held multiple, pretty much hundreds of shows in the past 20 years since their back in formation, if you want to call it that, back in 2002. And yeah, they've had some amazing matches. Like a lot of matches that I would happily rate. Like personally, I rate matches out of 7. I would happily rate a lot of Ring of Honor matches 7 out of 7, right? Or if I was rating them out of 5, happily do it 5. Rating them out of 10, happily rate them out of 10. Do you know what I mean? This just doesn't go for 1 or 2 matches, right? It's multiple matches that have gone on, and feuds as well, right? I would happily rate like a lot of feuds, right? Big star ratings as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've mentioned Ring of Honor countless amounts of times here on the Nerdic Pro podcast, right? I've mentioned Ring of Honor wrestlers, right? I've even reviewed the last Ring of Honor show before they went into the temporary hiatus back in December of 2021. And yeah, so yeah, like, it was Ring of Honor, right? They're a company that I personally have been following for, what year are we in now? 2022. I started following, if you want to call it that, Ring of Honor back at the end of I want to say September, October time of 2016, right? So just over 5 years, going on 6 years now, right? And obviously at the time, AEW didn't exist. Bless me. My apologies. Excuse me. Yeah, so obviously at the time AEW didn't exist. That obviously didn't exist. Cody Rhodes was kind of still had not long left the WWE. Dustin Rhodes, who was known as Goldust, he was still in WWE at the time. Yeah, so this was kind of like so obviously Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Adam Cole and all that, they were like, as well as Adam Page, they were all members of the Bullet Club at the time. And yeah, so sorry, pineapple, right? So yeah, lovely. Yeah, so they were all obviously members of the Bullet Club at the time. Yeah, so this is kind of how I then got into being a fan of the Bullet Club, obviously through watching Ring of Honor. I then started to get into companies like New Japan and all that, but it was through TNA or Impact Wrestling, as known as now, that I actually then started to get into companies like Ring of Honor, and then, get into New Japan and fucking All Japan and Pro Wrestling Noah and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and all that. And yeah, it was so never in my wildest dreams did I think that Ring of Honor would ever go into some form of hiatus. Obviously, with the pandemic then kicking in, kicking in 2 years ago, I thought that obviously that a lot of wrestling companies would take some form of hiatus. But Ring of Honor kept obviously going through with shows at their kind of like performance center, if you want to call it that, and then they were then doing obviously they had to do shows behind closed doors, etc. And then announced end of September, start of October that they'll be taking a temporary hiatus from December 14th. I think it was the last show or something. And then obviously recently announced that they're going to be returning for Supercard of Honor on April 1st. But so from then, they've actually got a weekly taped Ring of Honor sort of TV show, right? To take place. I think it's every Thursday from April 1st. Well, I think from the Thursday after April 1st, right up until the end of the year, right up until 2022. So this purchase from Tony Khan, the owner of All Elite Wrestling, AEW, right? I don't know if, obviously no one knows what's going to happen. Literally, in this segment, that Tony Khan had actually announced that he is now the new owner of Ring of Honor, right? He literally just said, pretty much, I now own Ring of Honor. Thanks for supporting AEW through the pandemic. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for letting AEW become 3 years old. And that was it. Literally not saying what's happening with the future of Ring of Honor. Not saying what he's got planned for the future of Ring of Honor. Not saying what he wants to happen with the future of Ring of Honor. Not saying if he's just got to delegate, if you want to say, headship of Ring of Honor to someone, i.e., the rumours that I've heard are that it's going to be that Ring of Honor is going to be the NXT of AEW, right? They're going to try and get everybody who was actually under a Ring of Honor contract before the hiatus back in December. They're going to try and give them a contract to either Ring of Honor or main roster AEW, right? And then have Ring of Honor as a kind of like a developmental territory, like on how WWE does with NXT and how they did with Florida Championship Wrestling, FCW, and Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW, right? And then the rumours are that it's going to be general managed, obviously with a general manager, probably multiple general managers, right? Because the rumours that I've heard that the potential general managers of Ring of Honor could potentially be William Regal, Samoa Joe, or Cody Rhodes, right? Obviously, Cody Rhodes recently has been released from his AEW contract. Well, his contract with AEW expired, and then obviously wasn't actually then renegotiated or contracted or whatever, or redone, yada yada yada. To the point where Cody Rhodes and now Brandy Rhodes are obviously now out of a job. So another rumor that I've heard that Cody and Brandy are going to be given a contract to work in Ring of Honor, right? To be backstage mentors, backstage coaches, and be teachers to people working in Ring of Honor, like the lesser known wrestlers who are currently in AEW, who are probably regular appearees on Dark and Dark Elevation, right? And then put them on Ring of Honor, bring back a lot of the old Ring of Honor crew, yada yada yada, and then have Cody and Brandy Rhodes general manage Ring of Honor, right? But as I said, I've also heard rumours that it's going to be another joint general managership between British legend William Regal and former Ring of Honor World Champion as well, Samoa Joe. Right? I don't know what to believe. I don't know what I want to believe. Right? This is going to be a sort of situation that I personally would want to actually see pan out. Do you know what I mean? Where I obviously can't predict nothing because us as fans have been given fuck all information on the of the new ownership of Ring of Honor. Literally, all Tony Khan said was that AEW's 3 years old. Ring of Honor was 17 years old when AEW started back in 2019. Right, he'd been a fan of Ring of Honor for a while up until that point. Right, and he just signed a deal. I think he said either earlier on that day or the day before to then purchase Ring of Honor, right? Excuse me, and then not saying nothing about it. So whether or not he's going to make an appearance tonight at Rampage, whether or not he's actually going to make an appearance tonight at Rampage and say X, Y, and Z, because he said the A, B, and C of him being a Ring of Honor fan. Ring of Honor being 17 years old when AEW was just starting, and then C being he now owns Ring of Honor. Is he going to say the X, Y, and Z either tonight on Rampage, Sunday at Revolution, or on next week's Dynamite and Rampage? Is he going to say the X, Y, and Z to what us as AEW or like us as Ring of Honor fans can expect to see for the future of Ring of Honor? Do you know what I mean? Because you don't buy a company that's temporary, that's in a temporary hiatus, that's actually got a date booked for when they can actually come out of hiatus with an apparent weekly episodic wrestling show taping from from the week after the 1st of April, from the Thursday after the 1st of April, right up until the end of the year, right, without saying without saying if any of this is for definite. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping he makes some sort of announcement tonight on Rampage. I'm hoping he makes, even if it's just like a backstage interview with Tony Schiavone or someone, right? Or with Mark Henry, right? If it's one of them, right, then I would still like to see why he's actually bothered buying Ring of Honor, like, B, what were his intentions of buying Ring of Honor, C, what is the future of Ring of Honor. Because you don't buy a company without any means and, like, plans of that company. Do you know what I mean? That's just like me taking over somebody else's podcast, right? Without any reason of actually doing so, just because I felt like doing so. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I went to somebody else's, like if I went to whoever runs, like, another podcast, right, and was like, look, here's 20 grand, right, sell me your podcast, right, I would then, like, in the prelude, right, if you want to call it that, of me purchasing that podcast, right, I would have plans for that podcast, right, I would think, what, A, why, B, make plans for future podcasts, C, look at the current lineup that this podcast has actually got for future podcasts, D, see the regular sort of stuff that they actually podcast about, and then try and actually do similar sort of podcasts to them. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so it's all well and good Tony Khan actually buying Ring of Honor. It's just, personally, right, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not alone when I say this, right, I'm pretty sure that myself and many other people, right, probably you guys actually watching this podcast now, are probably thinking, A, why? B, what can we expect to see for the future of pretty much both AEW and Ring of Honor? And C, is Ring of Honor going to be a developmental zone to AEW? Like, is that pretty much not the intention of Dark and Dark Elevation? Do you know what I mean? Because I pretty much swore that the point of Dark and Dark Elevation were to have the bigger sort of stars in AEW take on the lesser known independent based non wrestlers to actually have an AEW contract. So like the big names in AEW to take on the lesser known names in AEW. Do you know what I mean? I don't really watch Dark and Dark Elevation, so I wouldn't really know like the regular appearances on there. To tell the truth, I don't really watch. As I said, I don't really watch Dark and Dark Elevation. Yeah, like, I personally thought that was the entire intention of Dark and Dark Elevation. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, personally, I think what they need to do, right, is make Rampage 2 hours, right, for a start. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so, and then Tony, right? If I actually have the chance to speak to Tony, right, and do an interview with Tony Khan, right, with his announcement on Wednesday, fuck the entire Jacksonville Jaguars and owning Fulham and owning Wembley Stadium and the prelude of AEW, right, with what he said on Wednesday night, right, because this now is Ring of Honor, right, this is pretty much the talk of the wrestling world. Do you know what I mean? Like, Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor is pretty much now the talk of the wrestling world. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no doubt about it, and it goes without saying. Tony Khan's purchase of ROH, of Ring of Honor Wrestling, is now the talk of the wrestling world, right? My first question would be to him, why? What actually, persuaded you to spend your money on a company like Ring of Honor? Do you know what I mean? What persuaded you to go anywhere near Ring of Honor? Because Ring of Honor, quite frankly, is very rarely actually mentioned on AEW. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, alright, you get like the Elite speaking about them quite a lot, right? Whether it be Adam Cole or fucking Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks or Adam Page and CM Punk, right? Obviously, former big names in Ring of Honor, they'll probably slip up, like the odd occasional like Ring of Honor statement or a Ring of Honor phrase. Do you know what I mean? But they don't regularly fucking mention them week in, week out, show in, show out. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, literally this sort of story and this purchasing of Ring of Honor literally came out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? Not in my wildest dreams would I ever have actually thought that, is it Jacob Sinclair or something, like the now previous owner of Ring of Honor, right? Would have actually sold Ring of Honor to Tony Khan, out of all people. Do you know what I mean? I originally thought that, like, obviously with Braun Strowman and EC3 starting their own company, I would have originally thought that he was probably going to sell it to them. Do you know what I mean? And like, I've seen reports from Fightful Select and Dave Meltzer and from the Dirt Sheet Radio and fucking all of that, right? And obviously Dave Meltzer from the PW Insider and Pro Wrestling Insider, right, saying that Tony Khan purchased Ring of Honor for an estimated amount between 30 to 40 million dollars. Do you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean? Like, I get that he's a billionaire and a multi-billionaire. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So 30 to 40 million dollars probably may not actually touch his bank account. But the thing that gets me right is you already have your own wrestling company, right? And if the rumours are true that Ring of Honor is going to become a developmental territory for AEW, right? Explain to me the point of Dark. Explain to me the point of Dark Elevation. Explain to me the point on if he did want to start a developmental territory for AEW, why he just couldn't start up his own developmental territory for AEW, having to splash out between 30 to 40 million dollars, if not more, right? Excuse me, because surely he probably would have saved that 30 to 40 million dollars, right? And then like a large chunk and a large portion of this 30 to 40 million dollars on making his own developmental to actually make his own developmental territory for Ring of Honor. Do you know what I mean? And because it's not exactly as if his current locker room is fucking like some sort of like fucking ghost town. Do you know what I mean? Because how many people has he currently got, like in-ring wrestlers, has he actually got under an AEW contract? Do you know what I mean? Keith Lee, when he made his debut like a few weeks back, right? Tonight on Rampage, we like literally the first time he'd have actually been seen on AEW TV since, and it's been near enough 2 weeks now, 3 weeks since he actually made his AEW debut. Do you know what I mean? And then fucking when he beat Isaiah Cassidy to fucking win like the qualification ship, if you want to call it that, for this Sunday's Face of the Revolution ladder match. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so again, I'm still flabbergasted because I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that Ring of Honor would have actually have dared be mentioned in this announcement. I thought it would have been something to do with the pay-per-view, right? Something to do with, I don't know, potentially bringing Rampage to 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? Something to do with Dark and Dark Elevation. That's kind of what I was hoping for, right? Or even Veer Mahan to go to AEW. Excuse me. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so or somebody else to go to AEW, like the return of Cody and Brandy Rhodes, the return of Big Swole. Do you know what I mean? This is the kind of shit that I personally was actually expecting. Because as I've said, right, I did not in the slightest expect Ring of Honor to even be mentioned in this show. Just in the Dynamite show in general. Do you know what I mean? But it was. Tony Khan is the now new owner of Ring of Honor. Do you know what I mean? And a company who literally was a massive export of big name wrestlers to Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, anyways, all I can say is congratulations to Tony Khan, right? Congratulations, right? That's all I can say, right? And fingers crossed to fuck, right? Ring of Honor stays intact, because he wouldn't spend, even since he is worth billions upon billions of dollars, right? He still wouldn't spend that sort of money, $30 to $40 million. I'm seeing other reports from Fightful Select and Dirt Sheet Radio, right, that are saying that it could potentially be between $30 to $40 million, if not more. Do you know what I mean? That he actually bought Ring of Honor for, as there's been no official statement, as there's been no official statement from AEW management or Ring of Honor management. Do you know what I mean? Or even Tony Khan or Jacob Sinclair themselves. Do you know what I mean? Excuse me, on what the actual number is. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so I'm hoping Ring of Honor stays intact. Do you know what I mean? Because I have been a fan of Ring of Honor for fucking years. Do you know what I mean? Ring of Honor, we're literally, well, it was kind of split 50-50 between TNA and Ring of Honor on what actually got me, well, it was TNA that got me into Ring of Honor. And then it was Ring of Honor that got me into New Japan Pro Wrestling, Global Force Wrestling when they were about, Game Changer Wrestling, GCW, even Progress Wrestling, do you know what I mean? Rev Pro, do you know what I mean? Fucking AAA, again, Ring of Honor got me into AAA, Ring of Honor got me into CMLL, being a fan of AAA and CMLL, do you know what I mean? Ring of Honor made me a fan of MLW, so they have literally helped me as a person become a fan of independent wrestling, of independent wrestling companies. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, because obviously Ring of Honor have literally had 1,000,001 different working relationships with others. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously seeing a lot of the regular Ring of Honor talent wrestle for other companies like New Japan Pro Wrestling Noah, who else? All Japan Pro Wrestling, right? And then fucking MLW, Major League Wrestling, even started getting me into the NWA, funnily enough now. Yeah, so had it not have been for Ring of Honor, then I don't think that I would have been as big of a wrestling fan than what I actually am today. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so anyways, as I said, congrats to Tony Khan, right? But Tony, whatever you do, don't fuck this up. Do you know what I mean? Ring of Honor are a much loved wrestling company, loved all over the world. Do you know what I mean? And literally helped shape, along with the Bullet Club and along with New Japan Pro Wrestling as well, helped shape the landscape of independent wrestling, of independent professional wrestling. Ring of Honor, obviously, Ring of Honor, the Bullet Club, and New Japan, right, literally helped build the landscape of independent professional wrestling, right? That goes without saying. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, anyways, thank you very much for you guys joining me here today for the final ever podcast here. The last ever full-time podcast to take place here on Facebook. This coming Monday will be the debut podcast of the Nerdic Pro Weekly on a Monday and on Anchor and Spotify podcasts. On Anchor, you can listen to the Nerdic Pro podcasts without an account. You can listen to the Nerdic Pro podcasts over on Anchor with no account. Whereas Spotify, I'm pretty sure you do, and other podcast platforms that I'm going to be putting them up to, I'm pretty sure you'll have to and all. I'm pretty sure you have to have an account and all. But yeah, so anyways, thank you very much. I would like to say thank you to every single one of you who have watched the podcasts here on Facebook, who have been keeping up to date with the Nerdic Pro podcasts. Thank you to the 100 plus followers here on to the 100 plus of you who are following the Nerdic Pro podcast on Facebook, and thank you to the 90 plus of you who have actually liked the Nerdic Pro podcast here on Facebook. It really does mean the world, and I hope that you guys continue to listen and watch, listen to and watch episodes of the Nerdic Pro podcast over on Anchor and on Spotify, as from this coming Monday I am going to be doing more regular podcasts, and try to do what I'm planning to do, at least 3 to 4 podcasts per week on Anchor and Spotify. Yeah, like for you guys and all that. Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for the 100 plus of you who have followed the Nerdic Pro podcast Facebook page, and to the 90 plus of you who have actually liked the Nerdic Pro Facebook page. This isn't going to be the end of Nerdic Pro podcasts here on Facebook. I'm currently transitioning the Nerdic Pro podcast to go on to Anchor and Spotify podcasts on a full-time basis. There is going to come a time, probably at some point in the later part of 2022, where the Nerdic Pro podcast will only be available on Anchor and Spotify, etc. And yeah, so between now and the later part of 2022, I will still be doing podcasts here on Facebook, but it will only be one every 2 to 3 weeks, as I'm trying to keep, as obviously Anchor and Spotify are the more professional podcast sites, if you want to call it that. I will be leaving links for you guys to actually click on to take you straight to Anchor. To take you either straight to Anchor or Spotify, for you to listen to the most recent podcast to be uploaded onto Anchor and Spotify. I will still be making announcements and all that. The only two guaranteed, interviews will be guaranteed to stay. Interviews will be guaranteed to go over to Anchor. The Nerdic Pro Weekly is guaranteed to go over to Anchor and Spotify. It would only be the one story podcasts that I'll probably keep here on Facebook, where I only talk about one thing, whether it be rating a feud or whatever, or rating a specific show or whatever, or like the reaction series. Like the Nerdic Pro reaction series, right? That will definitely stay here on Facebook. Do you know what I mean? So whether I'm reacting live to a pay-per-view, reacting to an episode of fucking MLW Fusion, NXT or fucking NWA and all that, right? They will remain here on Facebook, right? For definite, that even goes for the end of 2022. Throughout 2023, the reaction series podcasts will remain here on Facebook. That is a definite, but it's just the other podcasts that will have more than one topic and more than one subject that I'll be speaking about that will stay on Anchor and Spotify, etc. So it'll only mainly be the reaction podcast, the reaction podcast series that will remain here on Facebook. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much for being a part of the Nerdic Pro podcast here on Facebook. It has been a blast. How many podcasts I've actually done, I couldn't tell you, as I was literally going to count how many I was actually doing, and then I ended up getting a phone call from someone off my mum, and then I completely fucking forgot. So yeah, literally, I blame my mum for that one. So yeah, like, she rang me just before I was about to start counting how many podcasts I've done here on Facebook, and then I completely forgot. Started the podcast, and then about 3 minutes in, I then thought to myself, shit. And yeah, so anyways, thank you very much to those of you who have actually been watching regularly here on the Nerdic Pro podcast Facebook page. And if there is anybody out there who's actually watched every single podcast of mine here on the Nerdic Pro podcast Facebook page, from the interview with the professional Nathan Cruz to today, right? It means a lot. From way back in October 6th, 2021 was the first podcast I had actually uploaded here on Facebook. So way back on October 6th, which was November, December, January, February, March. So literally going up to 5 months now. Do you know what I mean? Since my first podcast, do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's been here on the Nerdic Pro Podcast Facebook page. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much to those of you from this Monday. Be sure to be joining me on Anchor and Spotify. I will be leaving links here on posts here on Facebook for you to go and click on. It'll take you straight to, I want to say, the Anchor website, and then on the Nerdic Pro Podcasts page on the Anchor website. And then more specifically onto that designated podcast that I've left a link to on Facebook for you to then go and give that podcast a listen to. So yeah, because Anchor and Spotify are audio-based podcasts, whereas here on Facebook I could do it where you can actually see my ugly mug of a face. So yeah, anyways, that's been enough from me. I've said it enough in this podcast. But yeah, thank you very much. I have been Bobby Salazar. I've been your Nerdic Pro Podcast General Manager. Thank you very much. I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye.